Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to join the National Traction Engine Trust's evening webinar session. This week, we're doing something slightly different, and we're featuring a Cornish engineer. But in order to give you a flavour of what a workshop looks like, we visited the engineering shop about 10 days ago, and we have pre-recorded some film and a discussion that I had with Sam Henwood. Sam, I'm delighted to welcome you to our webinar, but also just to say what a great time I had seeing your workshop. It was such fun.
Oh, thank you, Rob. Good evening. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm just saying that we have in the past always had live interviews for our listeners to enjoy and to watch, but because of the nature of your work, we really felt it was much better to see it in the flesh. There's nothing quite like seeing a Cornishman squeezing a rivet, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So the evening will, after our little introductory chat, will be around about 45 to 50 minutes of a discussion I had with Sam, and our General Secretary Naomi has, with great skill, has overlaid lots of interesting photographs and videos so that you'll be able to see exactly what's going on. And I really hope you all enjoy this. And then after it's finished, there'll be a little bit of a quick chat afterwards. But now it's time for me to be quiet and to ask Naomi to run the footage, please. Well, Sam, I've known you for an awful lot of years, but in the time that I've known you, you've come from being, straight out of school, and now in what seems like a kind of a flash of an eye, you've got a really huge specialist engineering works that features traction engines, and that seems to be your whole life. And they're not just from this country, they're from halfway across the world. Yeah. Now, there has to be a story there. So I came out of school and I went to work doing something silly. You came out of school and you wanted to be an engineer. Why?
I wanted to be a tennis coach to begin with.
Well, that's close.
I got involved through my cousin's husband, Dave Goodwin, and sort of fell in love with it like we all do from there, really. It catches you, doesn't it? So that's how it really started. And then I was fortunate enough to serve my apprenticeship with Pete Phillips through meeting him through the rally circuit, really.
Yeah, well, I remember you meeting Pete because I think one of the first jobs that you did was when I just bought the Burrell clinker, and you were straight into your apprenticeship and you looked after the wheels and the repairing of the wheels that Pete was doing. But it's not the easiest of jobs to move into, isn't it? It's quite heavy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very manual, isn't it? So yeah, everybody that comes in and sees it all says there's nothing light in this game, which is quite true. But yeah, to go as, what was I then? 17. I did 1 year at sixth form and then came in from there. So yeah, 17, I imagine. And I remember at the beginning you sort of did feel really tired at the end of the day, sort of thing, from lifting and scruffing everything around. But yeah,
I think you would do. I mean, it's a very specialist field, because traction engines, whilst they are probably the simple end of engineering, they're also quite specific in the way that you approach it, because it's a rule inside calipers and outside calipers. You don't deal in microns.
No,
with
not
traction
at all.
engines.
No, and a lot of it.
You do those things up because there's not enough slack. But
a lot of it is just how it feels at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can tell if a bearing's going to be too tight, hopefully, or if it's going to run like it should, really.
Well, I've never been so amazed as watching you turning down one of our crank bearings and this huge, beautiful lump of phosphor bronze.
Yeah. Disintegrate.
Ended up in the bin.
Yeah.
I was crying all the way to my bank balance. But so you did your time.
Yeah.
And you learned about engineering. How did you set out on your own? Because That's quite a brave move in such a specific market.
Yeah, Pete and I sat down at the end of my apprenticeship and we chatted about a few options and things, and Pete was looking to go into a bit more of the commercial HGV side of it, which he did quite well, and I wanted to stay doing what I loved. So it was then that I had Pete offered me 2 days a week as a contractor work, which was great because he kept, when you come out of your apprenticeship, it's like, oh, where'd you go from here sort of thing, because you're then a skilled man where you don't really feel like it, I guess. And then I started to gain my own customer base in Cornwall. We did a lot with the Daniels brothers, yourself, John Atkinson at the time, John Wakeham. So there was a more mature group, I guess, looking after me a bit in the beginning, and guiding me. And I was very fortunate of all that. But yeah, I just had the little van and my little blue toolbox, and away I went then. So yeah, I did a lot of hours. Well, I still do a lot of hours, but yeah, I did a real lot of hours back then.
Yeah, I suppose if you're going to start a business, as you know, and I can relate to that.
Yeah.
In the business I started, it's much easier when you're younger, when you haven't got the burden of responsibility and commitment of all that we have now as families and children.
Families, yeah.
At least you've got that. You know, you can focus on it on a one-to-one. But so, what type of jobs were you doing? Because I know you have a complete all-around skill, and we'll have a look in a minute and see what's going on. But
did a lot of boiler work in the beginning because I didn't have the machine facilities that I do now. We also then got, which I'm quite grateful for, we got involved as a contractor for Pridham's.
Oh yeah.
So I went up there and learnt a lot with Roger and stuff, and unfortunately Roger and I still talk, and that was almost too short a time. I could have learnt a lot more, if you know what I mean, at that point. But as I say, I've been so fortunate that so many good engineers have given time to me, like the likes of Pete, Jeff, Westlake, Roger, Pridham, Clive Gibbard, Jim and Marsh. I did some work with Jim and Marsh for a long time when I was up in Sussex working. But yeah, I was very fortunate those people gave me their time of day and learnt a lot from them, which coming out of your apprenticeship was a great safety net, I guess, around you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Did you find that sometimes we take on people that have just come out of their time, and actually they're just starting to learn.
That's right.
So I guess that those people were able to give you and share their decades of experience.
Yeah.
And that's where you really learn, isn't it?
It's invaluable, isn't it? You
totally.
can't learn experience. You have to gain it, don't you? So.
And especially when you're in a tricky situation, you don't quite know what to do, and there's someone there just to tap on or pick up the phone to, or, well, actually, boy, I'd do that.
Yeah, and I still do it now. I still have times where I'm not sleeping at night, and I'll phone Roger up the next day and say, Rog, what would you recommend here? Have you been here before? He's got a great saying that he says, I've been down all the deep holes and there's nothing at the bottom, so there's no need for you to go down there. So yeah, so that works well.
I think also, if there are people watching that actually aren't physically involved in the steam world, they perhaps won't know that you don't go to a motor factors and pick up a bearing for a 7 horsepower.
No,
you actually start off with the material,
with a lump of bronze.
Lump of bronze,
yeah.
And have to machine it down. So in the vintage car world that I'm very slightly involved with, you can still acquire spares and they'll fit broadly, because that's that style of engineering. But with steam engines, it's very much bespoke. Isn't it?
It's very bespoke.
So everything you take on has got to be made.
And like often we're skimming shafts down, so then the bearing that you did have won't fit anymore, or one close to it. You've got to then, like you say, make new, and it is all made. And we try and do as much as we can in house. You have a lot more control on it then. And it's nice to put an engine out which you've done 95% of it. I mean, there's a few little jobs that we don't do because we haven't got the facilities for things like gear cutting, and that's a specialist subject in its own, really. But yeah.
I'd love for you to talk me through, in general, the engine that comes in that's completely kind of, let's call it tired, shall we? Keeping things polite. Yeah. But I just have to touch on your journeys to New Zealand, because I think that ties in really well. It must be such a proud moment for you when you were called across the other side of the world to take to pieces and put together and that big burrel. So talk us through that, because that's a pretty unusual, if not unique, phone call.
It was a very surreal moment. It was the 2nd of April, and if it was the day before, I would have thought this is an April Fool's moment. And that was your birthday, isn't it?
Yes,
April
I
Fool's.
know. Yeah. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah. Who's a joke on? So 2nd of April, I had a phone call from Simon Caldwell, and he said, "Sam, I'm friends with these guys in New Zealand. You need to phone them. They're talking about redoing their 10-horse barrel and would like to speak to you about it." And I got off the phone and felt I'd had one Guinness that night to drink at home with my dad, and I got off the phone and I thought, I've got to leave this until the morning. And an hour went by, and I said to Dad, I can't leave it now. I looked at the world clock on my phone, and it was a good time to call, so I phoned up, and John Hawkins, Mr. Hawkins as I called him in the beginning, I think he sort of told me to soon get rid of the Mr. part. And he said, "Well, I wasn't expecting you to phone me quite this quick." And I said, "Well, I couldn't not." I said, "It's a bit out there, isn't it?" And he said, "Give it 2 weeks and I'll have some more questions for you, and you'll no doubt have questions for me." So we spoke again in 2 weeks' time. And on the 31st of May, I didn't have the commitments what I've got now, I'll make that clear, like with work and stuff like that. On the 31st of May, I was on the way to New Zealand on a plane after never travelling more than 5 hours before and never travelling on my own, and landed the other side of the world, and straight away saw some people in the arrivals lounge, and I was like, these are the people I've got to go and speak to. And we went and spoke to them, and it was the Hawkins family, and it all grew from there. And fantastic experience, and it will never ever be forgotten, and I will never replicate that experience again in my life. I hope somebody else gets the opportunity to. But with regards as how the process works with taking the engines on and stuff like that, so over there basically it's strip everything down and label up what you've got. We stripped down to the bare boiler, and then stripped the boiler because we knew that there was parts of the boiler which needed replacing. So that was my first 5-week period in doing that. And we started to do a few repairs, like clean up the horn plates for stays and stuff like that.
How many times did you go up to New Zealand?
7.
7 times, okay.
Yeah, and 148,000 air miles that was. Yeah. And I took one of my guys over. Michael Hassan went with me on one trip, which was a great help. And then my dad came with me on my last trip and saw the engine in steam, which was lovely. But
Sorry, I've broken your throat.
That's all right, no problem. So we stripped the boilers all down. It was then a case of pallet home and in containers all the bits that we needed to get done over this side of the world. So we don't do boilerplate pressing ourselves here, and we don't cut gears. That's my 2 things that I don't do, because there's enough people doing the other things that it keeps the job flowing. Mm-hmm. So we sent the plate work to Mendip Steam, so they began doing that, and we sent the gear blanks off to have the gears made. So the New Zealand stuff, it did take quite a lot of planning, because you never wanted to turn up without the kit that you did. It could affect your whole trip.
Oh, that would be an absolute nightmare, wouldn't it? Oh, I've forgotten this.
Yeah.
I'll just nip home.
Luckily, over there's some good tool shops, and the Kiwi engineers are brilliant. They just don't specialise in what we do. So every trip there was a list drawn up at the end of each trip what I needed for the next trip. So that was fine, no problem. So we then got all the parts made over here, like the plate work and we didn't do the gears at that stage, but the blanks were back here ready to be done, because to do the gears, as you know, Rob, you need the shaft centres to find out where they're going to mesh and get the right amount of backlash. So then the following trip, the boiler components went over, the new firebox, the throat plate, the barrel was made over there. So that then opened up the job. We even had to send rivets out.
So can I stop you there a minute? So you're travelling over, in an aeroplane, and you've got to coordinate the dispatch of an arrival of all the kit you need. Yeah. Because you can't sit there waiting for weeks whilst they ship out. No. Just explain the mechanics of that. You've got a load of boiler bits. Yeah. You need to get them from Somercourt, Cornwall, to downtown Auckland. Or how do you do it?
So it's a shipping company basically. Okay. We'll pallet the parts up to one of the docks. I think Southampton is used quite a lot, and then it would be put on the water for, was it between 8 and 12 weeks, something like that.
So we had to
and there was a couple of occasions where we were waiting for the bits, but there was other stuff to get on to do, and we were like a week behind with the bits getting there for whatever reasons, with docks and things like that. So some of the times I had to take tooling in my luggage, and that was quite interesting at like Newquay Airport, when you turn up and you've got a caulking gun in your luggage and they say, what's in here, because it's gone beep through the metal detector, and you say caulking gun and everybody's on you then, right? And so we got the bits over there for the second trip, and it was boiler time then. So then we're into putting in the new throat plate, barrel, firebox, lining the cylinder block up. We got some of the big parts over there machined by a really good machining shop called Cullimals, actually, over in the South Island. Like the cylinder block was done by them. And there was always stuff going on back here, like some of the things like axle boxes and cannon shaft bearings and things like that. I sent them back to my workshop when we were in the old workshop, and I would do them when I came home in between times. So some of the mechanical stuff was ongoing then. It was just a lot of planning, really. So once you've got your boiler there and all done, your cylinder blocks lined up, it's then on to things like lining crankshafts and cylinder blocks up, and all the shaft centres, all the mechanical side of it then, I guess. We also made a tender back here, which we then flew over. So, I think that one flew. Something definitely flew in a plane, but that wasn't cheap. So we didn't.
It's not light.
No, we didn't do the flying bit as more than we had to. I think I got some bits packaged up at your place, actually.
I seem to remember that.
Yeah, I needed some shrink wrap for something.
That's right.
So the tender and the belly tanks, and they didn't do any work to the wheels. But normal going on, we'd be doing with what we've got here, Rob. There's often the boiler guys getting on with the boiler, which is your chassis, as you know, and in the background then the machine shop guys and the fabricator is getting on with the other bits. So hopefully it all comes together at the times that it should, because that's what we try and play on now, is how efficient and time sensitive we can get our jobs out to the customers with. Your mechanical bits all ongoing, your fabrication bits ongoing. Once you've got all those bits together, it's then things like your boiler lagging and all your tin work and all the little trinkety bits like drain cock pipes, all the little nitty gritty bits which take the time. Once all that's done, it's on to paint.
So just how many hours are we talking here? To get from yes, I'll take the job, to who's got the paint? Thousands of hours, is it?
Yeah.
Well, it's a huge job, isn't it?
It's mammoth. Yeah, like every engine's different, like, if you know what I mean, because not everyone needs every single job doing, because often people have done a little bit to keep them going, which is great. Sometimes there's the odd occasion where you've got to rework something.
Do you remember anything particularly in that job that was the real Achilles heel, the really awkward bit that just really phased you?
the hangovers drinking from with the Hawkins family. I think it actually went really smooth.
Well, I'd be surprised if it didn't, because you know your job.
Yeah. I mean, what we're talking there, 3 years ago when it was finished, 2018, I didn't have as many staff and engines going on back here back then, because obviously I committed to that project. Didn't have the workshops that we've got today. Yeah, I do think it actually went really well. We had one front wheel bearing which we had to nurse a little bit, which was done by a company over there which perhaps was too tight in hindsight. That happens, doesn't it? Like, there's not a single engineer that hasn't had a bearing go tight, and if they do, they're a bloody good liar.
Well,
I can't imagine. I can't think that there was a real hiccup. Like, we're quite fortunate over there. There was Alan Familton, as many people know. He's had a lot of kit and again background knowledge, which it's always nice over there to bounce ideas off of anybody, isn't it? And you spend a lot of time having a sleepless night, and then a eureka moment comes up, and you're like, oh no, I'll do that tomorrow or whatever. But
I know what you achieved was a fantastic job. I remember seeing it in the playpen up in Blandford.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I think
it was such a beautiful engine and a lovely restoration job. I'm sure they were chuffed to bits, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. Yeah. Like, it was probably one of the most personal engines to a family that I know everybody's engine is personal to them, but the Hawkins family, it's been in their lives 4 generations now, I think. Yeah, 4 generations. And I remember writing an email home, and I used to do emails, as you probably remember, Rob, to all the people back here. And it was like taking a human for an operation, it felt like. You had these 2 Sam's gorgeous little girls over there, and when you were taking it to bits, they were just there looking up at it, and not tears falling from their eyes, but just sort of, you could see in their brains like what's happening to the big engine. And it was a real personal project, and the family was great. The Kiwis are so welcoming, as we all know from when they've come to Dorset and over to the rallies over here and Welland and all the other places. They're great people to get along with. Yeah, a phenomenal experience and never forgotten.
You touched on something that I think is not immediately obvious. You know, we all love our engines.
Yeah.
We're attached to them in whatever reason, you know.
And we're dealing with everybody's pride and joy.
Absolutely.
So whether it's a roller, a showman's engine, a road loco, an agricultural, it's that person's everything, and they've all put a lot of effort in to earn it and to be rewarded with it. Like, you are dealing with people's personal prides and joy, and I guess we're fortunate that we do end up making a lot of friends with our customers.
Absolutely, and it's a big decision, as you know, as I know you want to do something. I remember when you managed and looked after the gears that we did on Clinker and the crank and everything else like that. It's a big decision, and also there are after work. The enjoyment. I was going to say toys, but that's a bit of a poor name. Yeah. But, so it is a big deal, and it's also a quite an expensive habit if you want to do major work on an engine, because it's a huge amount of work. Yeah. But that's quite difficult for you, because you know you're operating a business and your customer service, and yet you've got me that comes to you and says, I want you to do this, and it's just a challenge to kind of interface, isn't it? Because it's your work and it's their hobby, it's their baby, and it's my hobby as well.
Yeah. And you sometimes do look at things, and it could be poor business, but you do look at jobs and think, I've got to trim that back a bit, because there's occasions where you think, cool, that's a tough pill to swallow sort of thing for that one job. But that's me looking at it at my hobby, thinking what I would be prepared to part with if I was fortunate enough to be in that position. But it is a tricky thing. But like I say, like, we're dealing with our own hobbies. Like, all of my guys here are passionate about their job. hopefully, because it's
passionate about their wage bracket.
Because it's their hobbies as well. Every one of them is involved somewhere or another with rallying and going to shows and all the rest of it. Like, yeah, they're good.
So that New Zealand experience for you was absolutely unique, and I'm sure you learned a huge amount out of that experience, both in life but also from a professional point of view.
Yeah,
a real once in a lifetime experience.
100%.
But I've just been in and had a look through your works, and you've got lots of kit there. You're a busy boy, aren't you?
John Hawkins is responsible for a couple of things. He said to me one day, he said, "Sam, bite off more than you can chew and chew like hell." And he phoned me up one day and he said, "How's it going, Sam?" I said, "John," I said, "ever since you said that," I said, "I haven't stopped chewing, I've got jaw ache." We're having a go, I guess. We've invested in a lot of the kit is old. We have quite a challenge with NFUR insurers as to how to make it safe for the employees today, but we always manage to make the way right. The old kit, it just lasts so well, and it's built to do what we all enjoy our hobby in. So we have got a couple newer machines, but we've invested into it to make it we make it as easy as we can for the guys as well. Like we're fortunate, we've got 3 of us that are quite handy on a rivet gun, but we've got a rivet squeeze as well, which works on hydraulic, which hopefully you'll see later at some point, and that makes it a lot safer and less wear and tear on the bodies, because the boiler work is probably the more wearing and tearing on the joints and
heavy
everything
work,
like that. And hats off to the guys that are doing that 5 days a week, really. And there's a lot of people doing it all over the country as well, isn't there?
Really interesting, Sam, hearing about your time in New Zealand and that major project, and we all know, and you're too modest to agree, but that was a phenomenal job, and it was great to see a young Cornish engineer actually travelling the world and being chosen as the best person to carry out that task. And so, really hats off to you. But I've just looked in through your workshop, and I'm sure we're going to have a wander in a minute. Yeah. But how many jobs you got on at the moment?
It's about 15, I think.
15?
15 here, I think, yeah.
Yeah, you keep chewing.
Keep chewing. Yeah, the brain's pretty full.
Yeah, I can see that. So, have you got engines going through a major rebuild, or are they just bits and pieces?
Out of those 15, there's probably 3 in for what we would say is more smaller work. Mm-hmm. The rest of them are all in for either big boiler work or full rebuilds, really.
So if you're doing a full rebuild, what timescale would you give your own at when it turns up?
We've got another New Zealand engine actually coming hopefully in the new year, and that's going to be a 2-year turnaround.
So a couple of years is a reasonable time to take the pieces.
It's achievable, yeah. It's not what everybody would like to do though, because some people would rather pay monthly a certain amount, which is understandable. Others would like to do a bit, and then they might have another thing happen in life like we do, and it takes a little bit longer, doesn't it? So there's a little 5-horse Ruston boiler as you come in the door that you saw there, Rob, and that turned up last November, and it's had the full works through it, and it's pretty much ready to go now. So it's sort of the next week water will be going in the boiler, so that's 10 months work maybe for a full boiler, which I don't think personally is nothing
that seems quite quick, really,
quite
if you think
reasonable,
of
I think.
The amount of work and the takedown and the machining and the building back up.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
seems quite good.
and people want to use their engines, don't they? Like, we're all like, time goes by so quickly now. The days of a 10-year boiler job are not here anymore because life's too short for that, isn't it? So
It does appear to be that way, doesn't it? Yeah.
But we've got two of the Rustons in actually. We've got this lovely little 5-horse, and then from Somerset, and then we've got the drawings say it's either a 10 or an 8-horse boiler, so we're not quite sure what it was. But the Barry Lorden over in Ireland's got this lovely, massive, huge, great 8 or 10-horse boiler that we're building up as well. So that's the two Rustons in there. There's also in the works at the moment, there is 5 McLarens, I think. So McLarens are quite popular at the moment.
They are,
go
aren't they?
chuff
Yeah,
quite
they are.
loud,
I've
don't
noticed
they?
that.
Yeah, so we've got Paul Atwater's 8-horse McLaren crane engine in, which is going through having the full works done through it. He's up in Sussex. There's a 8-horse Mac again from Ireland in, so that's the second Irish engine we've got here. And that's just been in for some mechanical work, crankshaft, third shaft bearings, back axle. So sometimes they're not always in for the whole job. And then the other big Mac is the big 10-horse again from New Zealand. So the 10-horse Burrell actually opened up a few doors with the Kiwis, and you got to meet people and get your name about out there. So yeah, the 10-horse Mac, we're still waiting for gears unfortunately for that at the moment, which has been quite a while, and it should have been sorted, but Brexit and COVID and stuff's got in the way with our industry as much as yours and the likes of Martin's, who we heard about yesterday. So
But that's an interesting point. Obviously, we're talking during the latter part of 2021, and we've been very seriously affected by COVID. Has supply been an issue for you, or delivery, or have you felt it?
These gears are a Achilles heel, I guess. It's slowed that job down considerably. Materials, we actually don't, compared to a lot of engineering companies, we probably don't use a vast amount. Rivet supply's been good. We stocked up when we first heard about it, back in March 2020, that was, wasn't it? So we stocked up with that sort of thing. But yeah, no, the supply chain for us personally has been quite good, and we've been fortunate as a small business not to be affected too much. Like, the boys have had to be careful and do all the normal health and safety things that they've had to do with temperatures and hand washing and that sort of thing. But yeah, we had 4 weeks off back in that March-April period, and then there's been a couple of moments where some of us have had to self-isolate due to being in contact with people, but yeah, we've been quite fortunate. We've then got a couple of Wallaces in as well, actually, both single cylinders. One's owned by a Cornishman, James Locke, and another's by the Craddock family. And a Fowler convertible, a genuine convertible that is, that's it, right in the middle of everything really, and that's having some boiler work. Again, that's nearing completion now. But yeah, the boiler shop's very busy.
So you've got major projects on. I see that you've now, for a while now, been involved in painting and finishing, as you mentioned earlier, and also lining. And I think, if you recall, our dear Amy, Dr. Goodwin.
Yeah, she did quite well on the PR bit, didn't she, for us?
Yeah, very much so, yeah.
And another one's John Wakeham. Wakeham's after a commission charge, apparently, but you always got to haggle an auction.
Well, you always have to watch out for Lord Tredenick. He's a little bit... Well, his gin's very good. I've sampled it on many occasions,
but... no, the finishing, I think we've now offered the whole package. We're fortunate. We've got John and Amy doing that, and it's all brush paint. And then Amy does the pinstriping and the lettering afterwards. We've done a few jobs which haven't been actually involved with steam engines as well. We don't do too much of it, but yeah, we've done a Scammell show track lately, which has been quite well received. But yeah, and I think people do want a one-stop shop.
Yeah, very much so, and also from you, from a commercial point of view, if you can take a job from its breakdown and actually end up returning it to the customer, for want of a better phrase, to put the shovel in and and steam away. It gives you a much broader brush to be able to earn from. But also that customer can just leave the engine with you and issue his wants and instructions. It's all done. So I think it's great, and the quality of the paintwork that your painter does is phenomenal. And I know I was here when you had the show truck in, and I could not believe it was brushed.
Yeah, it is.
In fact, it was too good.
Wow,
it can't be too good, but what skills?
They've all got skills, the whole group of them. Like, I'm very fortunate I've got a good team working with me, because you wouldn't take on this many engines if it was just you. You couldn't do it.
No.
Not a chance. Or you'd be letting people down all the time. But the guys in the boiler shop, they know what they're about. There's the odd question and stuff. And then fortunate that I've actually got my boss Pete, who put me through my apprenticeship, working for me now. So he's decided that he wanted to be employed. So we've taken that aboard, and that works well. And he's actually spending a lot of time with one of our apprentices, Ben. And Ben's been with me since he used to come up and help when his granddad helped me in the beginning, when he was about 12 actually. And we've got 2 apprentices, Ben and Barney.
That's really good. I celebrate that, because it's succession, isn't it? It's if we as business owners don't invest in youth and train, especially in your skills, train them up, you end up with a void.
And the other thing is, as many people know, Goody, I started out with Goody, and he was always a very keen person to say, you got to keep bringing on the next generation, but also people have taken their time to invest their time into me. And you can't always give those people back something in return, so the only way you can do it is to invest your time into somebody else. So that's why we've got, well, that's not the only reason why, but that's one of the key reasons we've got 2 apprentices.
Very much so. I think it's really important, and I know the skill. It's renowned throughout the country, but it's quite a tricky business running this. It's as we said before, it's not bespoke. It's very much proper engineering, isn't it? It's not fitting. It's engineering. It's construction and repair and replacement. I think it's a great skill, and it's lovely to see that there's a new business growing out of an old habit, if you know what I mean.
Like Charles Burrell and John Fowler would have never thought these things would be still doing what they're doing today, would they? When they drew them on paper for the first time or whatever. But it's great as well to think that, like, they're 2 young guys, and we do have the odd email from other people saying, is there apprenticeships available? And at the moment my focus is to get these 2 guys through their apprenticeships. But it's great and refreshing to know that some young guys do, or guys and girls want to get their hands dirty, because unfortunately there's a lot of skills being lost. And like, you must see it in the fishing industry, how many young fishermen are coming through.
Very much so. Yes, it's incredibly important to train young people and bring them through.
And again, the SAC, that's a great overhead of that as well, isn't it?
Well, the Steam Apprentice Club is, I think, if I can remember the figures given to me by our president, we've put over 5,000 youngsters through the Steam Apprentice Club during the lifetime to date. And I think that's really to be celebrated, because...
Did you ever finish your little blue book that you got on it?
No, I didn't. No. But anyway, it's perhaps time to go and have a look out in the workshop and just see what's there, and we'll take some photographs, and we'll see if we can't string together something that will just illustrate what we've been talking about.
Yeah, and the paint shop and the machine shop's a quieter place.
That's a point. You've got...
It's quite loud in the other...
You've got lots of heavy engineering and big stuff going on, and yet you've got something that requires absolute cleanliness.
Yeah, well, we had
still air and...
Yeah, we had to sort that out, because it was quite an issue with grinding dust and stuff like that. You can't brush paint. We did at one stage have a massive great greenhouse pretty much in there, made out of plastic and wood and things, but it's not the best. So we've ended up developing this other little area.
Do you see that there's work for the future coming in? I mean, do we have enough engines in the country that are? We all know they're getting old of it now.
Yeah.
That they're normally 100 years before they need looking at.
Yeah.
Which I don't suppose the average modern car would kind of last that long without serious surgery.
No, we've got. I mean, there's probably 18 months, 2 years work ahead of us here, because there's a few outside ready to go as well. Not just what's in the workshop. There's also 2 overseas engines to come yet, and we've still got our local customers as well, which we shouldn't ever forget, because it only takes a few little jobs a year to keep a guy busy for a week, doesn't it? So
that's very true. I think you've got to have 7 horsepower to do a 10-year speed
that's
test.
another one, isn't it? Yeah. But yeah, there's our local Cornish guys that need to keep going. I mean, nobody's broken or worn out quite so much in the last 2 years, have they? So the best thing that we can happen now is everybody hit the road and go and wear a few bearings out on it. But it's busy. Yeah,
good.
It's busy.
Well, that's good, and a successful business is a busy business. So, Sam, I know you've got a lot of guys out there with significant engineering skills, but do you have to train them much, or do they come with what you need?
The apprentices obviously start out from scratch with us. I guess the people like Pete and Jeff who have worked for me, they all know a steam engine one way or another because it's their hobby as well. Most of them are all of them are extremely practical guys, and Amy's very good as well, obviously, at what she does. So they've got the core skills to begin with. It's then just like not every one of them knows how to knock a stay head over, or maybe the tolerances of what a crankshaft needs to spin at is what we have to sort of fine tune. But the guys now they are a great bunch of people, and they've all developed these things really well and are fairly straightforward to keep in the way which we want to produce our product, I guess.
Yes, I suppose it's they're all skilled engineers, but it's just about applying.
Like some of them have agricultural backgrounds or a fabricator background. It's then using that basic background to develop into the steam engine part of it, isn't it? But like I say, because all of them have got this as a hobby anyway, they know what it should be doing and what we need to achieve and things like that. So yeah, they're a good group of people, really.
Yeah, I mean it's obviously a skill that's here to stay. There's a lot of engines in the country, and there's a lot of engines in other parts of the world that they wear out. I mean, I know it might take 70 to 100 years to wear out, but most of the engines that we play with now are of that age, so they're coming up for major boiler work.
A firebox in preservation is X amount of years now, isn't it? So it's not like it's going to be done once in preservation. It will be done, I mean, when I was helping Jim out one day, we were taking a box out in, 2012, 2013, which was put in the 80s. So that would have been 2 boxes in 30 years,
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's got to do with the fact that back in the 70s and the 80s, we'd lost the skills of working in the way we do now. It seems that, what I hear is that actually we're better at restoration now than we were in the 70s.
The standard's gone up and the expectations have gone up. There's quite a lot of people wanting super silent engines, and fair enough. Like, if that's what you want, that's what everybody in this industry all trying to achieve for you, because there's a lot of other firms in the industry which are very good at what they do. I mean, there aren't so many probably one-stop shops quite a lot like what we are, but if you find there's very good boiler smiths around the country. There's very good machinist fitters all over the country. There's some other firms similar to us around the country, but might not do the paint. Like I can think of one, for instance, Universal Steam. They do a hell of a lot of boiler and mechanical work as well, but they don't do quite so much of the paint side of it. And then you've got great companies like Bicknell's, Mendip Steam, producing boilers and plate work, and good machinists up around Sussex and stuff like that. So yeah, the industry is, for our hobby, I guess, is quite big in a way.
It is, and it's you mentioned silent engines. You know, gear teeth profiles have been changed and amended, so you get a better roll of torque rolling from one tooth to another, so you get not quite so much of a, dare I say, clatter. But I know that when you did Clinker's gears, the gear profile had changed and was much more rounded, so that it was a better spread of load. So it's funny that
techniques changed.
Quite primeval technology from a gearing point of view has changed.
Yeah, it's quite a basic CNC machine, really, and some might argue it's not a proper CNC. But just for instance, our little XYZ lathe in there that you've probably seen as we were walking around, like that for us has changed, making nuts, bolts, and carrot bolts and those sort of things. Every one that you push the button and it all comes out the same. Like the tolerances are all exactly as they should be. So yeah, modern techniques have improved and allowed us to get better compared to the 70s and 80s, like you were saying. But with boiler work though, as you were watching with the guys riveting, I'll reference Roger Pridham again, but he was saying to me one day, he said, Sam, he said, I'm one of the lucky ones, and Roger is probably in his 70s, I would imagine. He said, I'm one of the lucky ones that could speak to the original guys who were producing these boilers. But the likes of my generation at 30s, we wouldn't be able to speak to the guys, and we're having to learn from the people who learned from the original people who did it. So there's that gap in that. But yeah, the boiler work, a lot of people see it as a black art, don't they?
I think that what you're, yes, very much so. It's about that proximity to knowledge. But with the machinery you're using now, you're more efficient in producing the components and still delivering a traditional engineered job. And let's face it, these engines that we are the custodians of will be here long after we're gone. And as you say, as long as there's coal to be burned and there's fun to be had, they'll be out. But who knows how long a firebox will last in preservation. It's pay, as Clive Gibbard once said, it's pay your money, take your chance. So well,
it's the same as a set of boiler tubes, isn't it? Some boiler tubes are lasting a lot longer than
some last for 2 years. I know that the barrel up in
whether it's water treatment, whether it's the steel, it's it's the uncertainty, unfortunately.
So you mentioned Bicknell's and Mendip Steam. So you go to them for some of the components. For instance, I mean, they're well known for fireboxes, aren't they?
Yeah, massively. There's enough companies around the country with the tooling, like the dies and stuff that's used for pressing out throat plates, back heads, firebox ends and stuff like that. So we haven't invested money into the pressing and the tooling. I did a little bit of it when I was up at Rogers, and when we eventually went to South Devon Railway. Not a great deal of it, if I'm honest, but I did a little bit with them. But yeah, we buy from the likes of those places, because also while they're pressing out plates, we can be doing another part of the engine, which improves the efficiency and hopefully gets the engine back to the customer quicker.
I noticed that running a modern business is a traditional business in modern times. I put it that way. I noticed you've got that rivet squeezer. I mean, that's must have taken a lot of the stress and the strains and made the job safer and more comfortable for the guys.
100%, yeah. Like the hottest they get using that is when they're taking the rivet out of the forge now, isn't it? So rather than pushing your arms onto a rivet gun and bouncing around. But I think the rivet squeezer is, like you said, it health and safety wise and noise and consistency as well. It's a brilliant tool for that. I still like to do the traditional riveting with the guns because I believe that there's a big skill in that, and some of the videos that we put on our Facebook page of the guys doing it, they make it look very easy, but the first time anybody jumps on a rivet gun, if they've not had a clear instruction of how to drive it, they could be chasing that around the workshop and it's quite impressive to see a new person grab hold of a rivet gun for the first time, I would say. But the rivet squeezer and the overhead crane is a beautiful thing which works in conjunction with that. We built the workshop around the overhead crane, so I sized the crane up and then built the workshop to fit it, and it just works so good with the wireless remote, and it takes all the stresses out of it. You're not trying to scruff a forklift around or a gantry or anything like that.
It's ultimately control, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And just moving from perhaps what's the first part of rebuilding an engine to the final part. We were talking to your painter, Willsey.
John.
And that's an art in itself, isn't it? It's completely the opposite end of the scale in every way. Yeah. But it's that finish that the customer sees.
Yeah. Unfortunately, sometimes the boiler might be not forgotten about, but people comment more so on the paint rather than what a rivet head's looking like, if you know what I mean. But I mean, the boiler work and the machining is where my roots are, so I'm very passionate about that. But I respect that we need to produce this whole thing looking as good as we can from start to finish. But the painting is a real skill in itself, and the environment and temperature seems to play a lot with that. But like everything, it's like building a house, Rob, isn't it? Like if you start with your foundations out, you're constantly trying to correct an error. So if that boiler's out from the beginning, you're constantly fighting yourself. So the boiler really is quite an important part, I see.
And I I tend to think that perhaps in today's 21st century world, we actually restore engines to a better standard than they were built in the first place.
Yeah, we've taken some engines apart which have been original makers' engines, and the rivet heads on that are sometimes beside the rivet shank and all those types of things, like you say. Like, it's a different application now, isn't it? Like, back in the day, it was bang that boiler out and let's get the next one in, and it was the lorry of its time, wasn't it?
Very much
or
so.
The tractor of its time, whatever you want to say. It was about getting it to work, and now it's about getting it as good as it can be if the customer wants it like that.
I mean, there was a well-known borough in this county that when the firebox was taken out, it was an inch out of square in the box.
Yeah.
That's just the way it was.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a celebration of the quality of engineering that we have available to us now, but also the knowledge that we have and the skill. And all we're doing is transferring our tolerances from today with some adjustments into our engines of yesterday. But the better they're produced and the better they're made, the longer they're going to last.
You should hope so, yeah.
We would hope so,
yeah. I am quite a believer, though, like Pete always taught me this a lot, like that we are restorers of these engines as well. Like, if we can keep a original part, as long as it's safe and you can justify the cost involved, I think it's an important thing to keep a lot of the originality. But there comes a line where you do have to there comes a time where you do have to draw a line under it and say, this is past its use now, and now it's time to make new. But we did quite an interesting project only last year, I think it finished, which was the oldest surviving Marshall roller, I think that's right to say. owned by Paul Duxbury up in Nottinghamshire. And we mexed in, I think you came in one day and saw it actually, Rob. We mexed the original patina of the engine, but we had to then make a new tender and new lagging sheets and stuff, and we tried to as subtly as we could blend all this together, because the patina on it, as you saw, was just fantastic, like the motion covers with all the old lettering. But that was a real, how can we restore as much as we can of this rather than make new? Like the saddle on the chimney, we fabricated that to how the previous repair had been done and stuff like that.
It's about, good. I suspect it's about, engineering is about precision, but at the same time, preservation is about being sympathetic to what you've got. Yeah. If you've got something that's got to be taken completely to pieces, once you've got a hole in the tender, doesn't matter how big or small it is, that's got to be renewed. So that's what it is. But if you get an engine such as that, then it's about being sympathetic, listening to what the customer wants, and trying to preserve and keep that patination, because it takes years and it's a skill in itself, and obviously you've got that really well.
Yeah. But I guess at the same time though, we have, like, you mentioned how good John's finishes with the paint. Again, there's several good painters around the country, and you have to admire the skill involved with producing, like, independence of Johnny White's looked fantastic in the Dorset tent there a few years back, didn't it? And,
it was beautiful. It was such a restoration.
Yeah. No, that's us being Burrell fans, I guess, isn't it?
Well, that's nothing to do with
but you have to appreciate both scales or both outlooks on restoration, I guess, don't you? Like whether it's going to come out all looking like brand new or try and keep the original patina. So.
Well, I mean, in the years that I've known you, Sam, and ever since before you came out of your time, you've come such a long way, and I think it's a great testament to what you're doing, and it's a phenomenal service to the movement. But I'm just thank you so much for your time, and it's just cracking to spend some time and just absorb it. I love it. It's great. You. The lads are they're brilliant, and I think it's a real testament to us. So thank you so much for giving me your time.
Well, thank you for coming to have a look round. So it's been good showing you about.
My pleasure. My pleasure. That'll shrink the bill next time you do my work, Sam.
I should keep selling fish. Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed that presentation that Naomi's put together of Sam having a chat in such a modest way about the skills and the works that he carries out within his engineering works in Cornwall. Sam, congratulations. Super to watch again. I've watched it a couple of times, just to get the feel of it, but a great insight into boiler making and to steam preservation. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. There's a few flashbacks there as well from when we had the old sheds and all the different stuff we've done over the years. Really, I didn't know some of those photos were going to be used, but it's good to see.
No, very much so. This tonight, this particular presentation has been slightly different, really. As I mentioned earlier on in the evening, it's difficult to demonstrate what you do in work without having to take films and to share what's going on. So my thanks to obviously to you, but also to Naomi, who was with great skill.
Yes, that was really good.
Together. It's I hope everybody's enjoyed it. It's not often one gets a little peek into how it's done, so to speak. You've got an awful lot of work on there, so
a lot of chewing. Yeah.
An awful lot of chewing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The clean teeth. Are you hiring? Are you hiring people, or is it? You got enough?
Yeah, we're actually going to be probably looking for a new candidate in the near future, I imagine. Yeah, there's a lot of boiler stuff going on, so yeah, there'd be a space coming up. I think people, if they were interested, keep an eye on our Facebook page, I guess, for a boiler smith opportunity. So that will be in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, like I say, we're fortunate. I've got a very good team of guys behind me, and they're all passionate about what they do, and I'm grateful to them for that, really. The same as I'm grateful for everybody who's got the business to how everybody's seen it in the last hour. So I've been very fortunate and yeah, thankful, really.
No, to me, it's been great to just relive where you are, and as you know, and I personally recall where you started from, and I think it's congratulations to you for what you've achieved. But also, I suppose I need to say thank you to the guys who, and to Dr. Amy Goodwin.
Yeah.
What's having a doctor doing your work, Sam? It's ridiculous. For all the lads who put up with us getting in their way whilst they were working, and with good humour. So thanks, guys, for that. I'll bring your Mars bar down, or maybe a bit of fish.
Yeah, there was a few after, a bit of crap.
I can imagine. Yeah. But no, Sam, once again, thank you very much indeed. Just to all of you who have joined us, there were 159 watching this particular presentation, so I think that's great. Thank you very much indeed. And if you're an event or an organization that would like to put yourself forward to come and join me with in one of these presentations, webinar, please do give me a call, chairman@ntech.co.uk, and love to have a chat and to see how we can have a chat with you and share with you what you're doing in your event or your business. It would be lovely to share other people's interests and other events, other yards, other rallies that are going off around the country. So please do make contact with us at chairman@ntech.co.uk, and we'll see what we can do. Can't promise, but we'd love to help if we can. But for tonight, Sam, thank you so very much indeed for welcoming Naomi and I into your workshop and sharing with us just what it is that you do. And I hope on behalf of all the listeners, thank you so very much indeed. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, no problem. And thank you to the NTET and Naomi for what you guys all do for the rest of us. So yeah, there would be a lot of big molehills to climb, I guess, without the NTET, wouldn't there? So yeah, thank you all too.
We're doing a bit, but thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, well, thank you very much indeed once again for joining us. This now puts an end to our evening. Very much and hope you've enjoyed what we put on for you tonight. There will be other events coming up soon. Pop on to ntech.co.uk and have a look at the webinars that are forecast to come out through the winter. We plan to put this on through the early part of 2022. So if you've got an idea, please make contact. We're here to share and we'd love to hear from you. But from me and the National Traction Engine Trust tonight, good night.